And our Old Testament lesson today comes to us from the book of Lamentations. I'll be reading from the 3rd chapter, verses 19 through 33. You can find that on page 1001 in your Pew Bible if you'd like to follow along. And I invite you to listen for what it is that God is saying to you today. The memory of my suffering and homelessness is bitterness and poison. I can't help but remember and am depressed. I call all this to mind. Therefore, I will wait. Certainly, the faithful love of the Lord hasn't ended. Certainly, God's compassion isn't through. They're renewed every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I think, the Lord is my portion, therefore I'll wait for him. The Lord is good to those who hope in him, to the person who seeks him. It's good to wait in silence for the Lord's deliverance. It's good for a man to carry a yoke in his youth. He should sit alone and be silent when God lays it on him. He should put his mouth in the dirt. Perhaps there is hope. He should offer his cheek for a blow. He should be filled with shame. My Lord definitely won't reject forever. Although he has caused grief, he will show compassion in measure with his covenant loyalty. He definitely doesn't enjoy affliction, making humans suffer. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Atlanta's Sweet Auburn community was like most middle-class neighborhoods in the 60s. Wood frame houses line the street, mature trees in the yards. And standing on the sidewalk, you might see a woman at the kitchen sink, washing dishes after supper. Inside the living room, her husband might be relaxing in an armchair, reading the day's newspaper and catching up on the latest. Their kids might be finishing up homework, sharpened pencil points scratching out math problems, their yawns signaling the end of a long day. But in that neighborhood, in that time, no one took an ordinary day for granted. You see, Atlanta was a flashpoint in the civil rights movement. And Auburn Avenue cut right through the heart of the black business district, bisecting the neighborhood where Martin Luther King Jr. was born in an old Victorian house. Many nights, when the sun went down, the Klan showed up. In their white sheets and hoods, they marched through Sweet Auburn, a terrifying and hateful presence. Echoing down the street, the sound of their marching reverberated into homes, reminding this black community that there was nowhere that the Klan couldn't and wouldn't go. When the residents of Sweet Auburn saw the torches down the street and heard the stomp of feet against asphalt, they ran to lock their doors, draw the curtains, turn off the lights, and hunker down until the Klan moved through. Still and silent and powerless against the invading mob. Like a giant bulldozer, the Babylonian army flattened everything in Jerusalem. Israel couldn't hide from the marauding soldiers. Even the temple was destroyed. Bent on causing as much suffering as possible, nothing was off limits for the army of King Nebuchadnezzar, who contaminated the wells, even throwing salt on the fields to keep crops from growing. I am someone, Jeremiah writes in Lamentations, who saw the suffering caused by God's angry rod. He is a bear lurking for me, a lion in hiding. He took me from my path and tore me apart. He made me a shooting target for arrows. Jeremiah's heart is broken. Israel's whole world lies in ruins. And to make matters worse, they believed that God had used Babylon to punish them. God had done this to them for breaking the covenant their ancestors made with God. And Jeremiah remembers all of this, and he reflects. Depressed, he waits to see if anything will change. When life lies in ruins, we wait for the other cosmic shoe to drop. What else is God going to throw our way? John C. Holbert writes, "Whether we believe God causes such pain or not, we can agree with the ancients that in life, chaos always threatens the order of things. Death is ever ready to swallow life." We've been learning the last couple of Sundays that to lament when life falls apart helps us honestly name what we're experiencing. When chaos and death threaten our ordinary lives, lament gives us permission to say what we need to say to God, to rail and shake our fist and wonder where in the world God is in all of our trauma. The first two chapters of Lamentations are a slog. In vivid and terrible imagery, Jeremiah paints a stark picture of the horror that Israel experienced. And he laments and he shouts and he cries on behalf of Israel. Their communal pain becomes his lament to God. But lamenting doesn't last. Something shifts inside of us when we've run out of tears and when our throats are sore from crying. And we see that movement happen in verse 21 of our reading for today. There's a shift in mood. "I call all this to mind," Jeremiah says, "therefore I will wait." And in the next verse, Jeremiah's despair seems to be lifting. Certainly the faithful love of the Lord hasn't ended. Certainly God's compassion isn't through. They're renewed every morning. Great is your faithfulness, Jeremiah prays. The word translated here as compassion or mercy is based on a Hebrew word for womb. Sung Chan Ra writes that when the poets reached for a word to best describe the astonishing mercy of God, they fastened on a woman's womb, imagining God's love to be like that unique love shared by a woman for her child. You see, we are encircled and contained within God's compassion, tethered to God's love, even in our darkest day. When it seems as if God is conspiring against us, we can be assured that even then, God's love continues and holds us close. And that's where hope is born, I think. In lament, we complain and come to terms with the reality of our circumstances, but God doesn't leave us there. Always faithful, God heals us so that we can help heal the hurts in this world. So even while our world has fallen to pieces, God moves us toward hope, gives us alternatives that things can get better. And while we may never be the same, there is more living to do, more healing to be done. There's an ancient Jewish story that doctor and author Rachel Naomi Remen tells. She says, "In the beginning, there was only the holy darkness, the Ein Sof, the source of life. And then in the course of history, at a moment in time, this world, the world of 1,000 things, emerged from the heart of the holy darkness as a great ray of light. And then, perhaps because this is a Jewish story, there was an accident, and the vessels containing the light of the world, the wholeness of the world, broke. And the wholeness of the world, the light of the world, was scattered into 1,000 fragments of light. And they fell into all events and all people, where they remain deeply hidden until this very day. Now, she says, according to my grandfather, the whole human race is a response to this accident. We are here because we are born with the capacity to find the hidden light in all events and in all people. To lift it up and make it visible once again, and thereby to restore the innate wholeness of the world. It's very important to hear this story in our times. And this task is called Tikkun Olam in Hebrew. It's the restoration of the world. So I think that lament is a part of Tikkun Olam. It's one of the chapters in God's ongoing story in which we join with God to make things better, working for justice, loving our neighbors, extending peace. Without lament, we live in denial. But lament starts the engine of actionable hope, which moves us to join hands with God once again, to find the presence of God everywhere, even in lamentable events, and then to restore the light of God's wholeness to the world. In her poem, Shine, Andrea Gibson, who died this past summer, captured the same idea. This is what she wrote. I was once told the story of a shaman who woke every single morning of his life crying for all the world's sorrow, and yet every day he would rise and shine bright. He would walk the path from morning to night, when he would light the night sky with the stars that would shine inside his dreams. And for every hell he ever saw, he made himself become the hope that tugged the rope, that rang the bell in the steeple of the people's hearts. He would part the seas of greed with the outstretched hands of his giving, replacing the hate with the most amazing grace this world has ever seen. Lament can move us from grief and bitterness to hope and action. When we see our circumstances as they really are, we can begin to see also alternatives to our despair, places where the fragments of light are shining. And when we see those fragments, we can lift them up and make them visible again, each one of us holding the light to let others know it's really there. A testimony to God's promise through Christ that death and despair aren't the end of the story. For a long time, the Klan kept marching down Auburn Avenue. The fear and despair of the people locked in their homes continued. But then, the civil rights movement gained momentum. And as Mary Ann McKibben Dana tells the story, and then, slowly and quickly and slowly and quickly, civil rights started to take hold. When people could finally see justice on the horizon, the Klan marched once again down Auburn Avenue. But this time, the people lifted their window shades, threw open their doors, stood on the sidewalk, and laughed, and laughed, and laughed. And the Klan never marched down Auburn Avenue again. Faithfully, God is in all of it. Even the hard times, even when we're afraid and in shock and lamenting, God extends hope to us, and little by little we begin to understand that God is still faithful. We are contained in the womb of God's mercy, tethered to it with an unbreakable love. When the other shoe drops, God is there. when we're scared and hurting and can't find a way forward, God is there. When we're able to see fragments of light, God is there to help us fit those pieces of hope together, slowly working with God again to redeem the world. May it be so. Amen.